The storm hit on a Tuesday night in March. I was babysitting my nephew, Connor, at my sister's house while she and her husband went to a wedding in the city. Connor was 7 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs, and usually went to bed without much fuss. We'd spent the evening watching nature documentaries and building a Lego volcano. By 8:30, he was yawning. I got him into his pajamas, read him 2 chapters of his current favorite book, and turned off his bedroom light. "Aunt Sophie," he said as I reached the door. "Yeah, buddy? Can you leave the hallway light on? I don't like it too dark." Of course. I left his door cracked open, the light from the hallway spilling into his room. My sister's house is in a quiet suburb, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone, where kids ride bikes in the street and people actually talk to their neighbors. It's peaceful, safe. I went downstairs and settled onto the couch with my phone, scrolling through social media. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up. The weather forecast had mentioned possible thunderstorms, but nothing severe. At 9:20, the first lightning strike lit up the windows. Thunder followed almost immediately, a deep boom that rattled the glass. The storm was right on top of us. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. Even the little green light on the microwave, the digital clock on the cable box, everything gone. I used my phone light to navigate to the kitchen. My sister keeps a drawer of emergency supplies, candles, matches, a real flashlight with actual batteries. I lit 3 candles and placed them around the downstairs, then checked my phone. The power company's website showed an outage affecting over 2,000 homes in the area. Estimated restoration, midnight. I climbed the stairs to check on Connor. He was sitting up in bed, clutching his stuffed triceratops. "The power went out," he said, his voice small. "I know, buddy. It's okay. It's just the storm. They'll fix it soon." I sat on the edge of his bed. "You want me to bring a candle in here?" He nodded. I brought one of the candles from downstairs and set it on his dresser, far enough from anything that could catch fire. The flickering light made shadows dance on his walls. "Better?" "Yeah, thanks, Aunt Sophie. Try to sleep, okay? I'll be right downstairs." Back in the living room, I sat in the candlelight and listened to the storm. Rain hammered against the windows. Wind howled around the corners of the house. But inside, it was quiet except for the occasional creak of settling wood. Then I heard the doorbell ring. I froze. Who would be out in this weather? I went to the front door and looked through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, soaking wet. He was maybe in his 40s, wearing a blue jacket and jeans. He looked normal, cold and wet, but normal. I cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Can I help you?" "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you." He gave an apologetic smile. "My car broke down about a block from here. My phone's dead. I was hoping I could use your phone to call a tow truck." It sounded reasonable, plausible, but something felt wrong. "I can call for you," I said. "What's the number?" His smile faltered slightly. "That's really kind, but I need to call my wife too. Let her know what happened. Could I just come in for a minute? I'm freezing out here." Every instinct told me no, but I felt guilty. This was a nice neighborhood. I was being paranoid, wasn't I? "I'm sorry, I can't let you in, but I'll call the tow truck for you." "What company do you use?" His expression changed. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by something colder. "Come on," he said, his voice taking on an edge. "It's pouring rain. I'm not asking for much. Just let me in for 5 minutes." "No, I'm sorry." I started to close the door, but he pushed against it. Not hard enough to break the chain, but enough to stop the door from closing. "Please," he said, his voice lower now. "I really need to come inside." My heart was pounding. "I'm calling the police." "No, you're not." He wasn't smiling anymore. "Your power's out. I can see it from the street. You probably don't have much battery left on that phone." He was right. My phone was at 23%. "Leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Now." He leaned closer to the gap in the door. "Is anyone else home?" That question sent ice through my veins. He was asking if I was alone. He was checking. "My husband's upstairs," I lied. "He's a cop." And he has his gun. The man studied me through the gap, his eyes reflecting what little light came from the candles behind me. Then, slowly, he stepped back. "You should be more helpful to people," he said. "You never know when you might need help yourself." He walked off the porch and disappeared into the darkness. I slammed the door shut, locked the deadbolt, and immediately went around checking every window, every door. Everything was locked, but the house suddenly felt much less safe. I grabbed the largest knife from the kitchen block and sat on the couch where I could see both the front door and the stairs. My phone was in my hand, 911 ready to dial. 20 minutes passed. 30. The storm continued to rage outside. Then I heard it. A sound from the back of the house. Something scraping against wood. I stood up, gripping the knife, my phone flashlight pointed toward the kitchen. The sound came again. Deliberate. Rhythmic. Like someone trying to pry open a window. I ran upstairs to Connor's room. He was asleep, the candle still burning on his dresser. I picked him up as gently as I could. He stirred but didn't wake fully. "Shoo, it's okay," I whispered. "We're playing a game." I carried him into my sister's bedroom, the one with the lock on the door. I set him on the bed, locked the door, and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's trying to break into my house. I'm at 447 Maple Street. I have a child with me. Please send someone now. Officers are on the way. Stay on the line with me. Are you in a safe location? We're locked in an upstairs bedroom. Good. Stay there. Don't open the door for anyone except police. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, Connor sleeping on the bed behind me, the knife in one hand and my phone in the other. The scraping sound stopped. For several minutes, there was only silence and the sound of rain. Then I heard glass break downstairs. "He's inside," I told the 911 operator, my voice shaking. "He broke a window. He's inside the house. The officers are 2 minutes away. Stay where you are. Don't make any noise." I could hear movement downstairs. Footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps. He was walking through the first floor. Then, the footsteps started coming up the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I held my breath, gripping the knife so hard my hand hurt. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. They stopped. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. Heavy breathing. The door handle turned. It caught on the lock. Turned again. He was testing it. "Police, we're coming in." The shout came from downstairs. I heard the front door slam open, multiple voices, footsteps thundering through the house. The breathing on the other side of my door stopped. I heard running footsteps going back down the stairs, more shouting, a scuffle. Clearer. Suspect in custody. A knock on the bedroom door. "Ma'am, this is Officer Valdez. You're safe now. You can open the door." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. The police arrested the man. He wasn't from the neighborhood. He'd been driving around during the blackout, looking for houses that appeared to have only women or children inside. He targeted 3 other homes before mine. Connor slept through the entire thing. My sister came home at midnight to find police cars in her driveway and me giving a statement in her living room. The power came back on at 1:45 a.m. By then, I'd already decided I wasn't comfortable being alone in a house during a blackout ever again. That was 4 years ago. I still babysit Connor, but never during a storm. And never at night. Some things change you. Some fears are worth keeping. The power went out at exactly 9:47 p.m. I know because I was watching the clock on my laptop when everything went dark. I'd been working from home that evening, sitting at my kitchen table with spreadsheets open, trying to finish a report before morning. The sudden darkness was complete. No streetlights, no glow from neighboring houses, just black. My apartment is on the ground floor of an older building in downtown Minneapolis. 3 stories, maybe a dozen units total. The kind of place with radiator heat and windows that rattle when trucks pass by. I felt my way to the junk drawer and found my phone. The battery icon showed 12%. Great. I turned on the flashlight and walked to my living room window. The entire block was dark. Further down the street, maybe 8 or 9 blocks away, I could see lights. So it wasn't the whole city, just our area. The building has a basement. I'd been down there exactly once, when I moved in 2 years ago. The landlord had shown me where to find the circuit breaker and the water shut-off valve. Standard stuff. I remembered the space being cluttered with old furniture, filing cabinets, and a furnace that rumbled like a dying animal. I texted my landlord, "Power's out in the building. Should I check the breaker?" No response. I waited 5 minutes, watching my battery drain to 11%. The smart thing would have been to just go to bed, wait for the power company to fix whatever was broken. But I kept thinking about that breaker. What if it was something simple? What if I could flip a switch and have my lights back? I grabbed my keys and opened my apartment door. The hallway was pitch black. I swept my phone light across the corridor. Empty. Silent. The door to the basement stairs was at the end of the hall, just past the mailboxes. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing off the walls. When I reached the basement door, I noticed something that made me pause. It was already open. Not wide open, but definitely not closed. Maybe an inch of space between the door and the frame. I pulled it wider. The hinges creaked. The stairway descended into darkness, and even with my flashlight, I could only see the first 4 or 5 steps. The air that came up smelled like mold and dust and something else. Something metallic. "Hello?" I called down. Nothing. I started down the stairs, counting them as I went. 1, 2, 3. The wood groaned under my weight. 7, 8, 9. At the bottom, I swept my light around the basement. Everything looked the same as I remembered. Old furniture stacked against the far wall. The furnace squatting in the corner. Exposed pipes running along the ceiling. And there, on the opposite wall, the circuit breaker box. I crossed the basement, weaving between a broken chair and some cardboard boxes. The concrete floor was gritty under my shoes. I opened the breaker box. All the switches were in the on position. So it wasn't the building's electrical system. It really was just a neighborhood outage. I should have left right then. But as I closed the breaker box, my light swept across something I hadn't noticed before. Behind the furnace, partially hidden in shadow, there was a sleeping bag. Not just lying there. It was arranged, spread out flat with a pillow at one end. Next to it sat a plastic grocery bag, a water bottle, and what looked like a flashlight. Someone had been sleeping down here. My heart started pounding. I backed away from the furnace, keeping my light on the sleeping bag. The fabric was slightly wrinkled, like someone had recently gotten up from it. Then I heard it. A sound from the far corner of the basement, behind the stacked furniture. A shuffling noise, like fabric dragging across concrete. "Who's there?" My voice came out shaky. The shuffling stopped. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I was frozen, my phone light trembling in my hand. Then, slowly, a figure stood up from behind an old filing cabinet. It was a man, tall, maybe 6 feet. He was wearing dark clothes, and in the beam of my flashlight, I could see his face. Pale, unshaven. His eyes reflected the light like an animal's. We stared at each other for what felt like an hour but was probably only seconds. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was quiet, hoarse. "I didn't think anyone would come down here." I took a step backward. "You need to leave." "I know." He didn't move. I needed somewhere warm. Just for a few nights." "How long have you been here?" He hesitated. "A week. Maybe more. I lose track." A week. This man had been living in my building's basement for a week, and none of us had known. "You need to leave," I repeated, my voice firmer now. "Right now, or I'm calling the police." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll go." But he didn't move toward the stairs. He moved toward me. I backed up faster, but I misjudged the space. My shoulder hit a metal shelf, and something fell, clattering loudly on the concrete. The noise seemed to echo forever in that enclosed space. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, still approaching. "I just need to get my things." His things were behind the furnace. I was standing between him and the stairs. I had to move. I shifted to the left, giving him a clear path, my phone light never leaving his face. He walked past me, so close I could smell him. Sweat and dirt and unwashed clothes. He gathered up the sleeping bag, stuffed it into a backpack I hadn't noticed before. The whole time, neither of us spoke. When he had everything, he finally looked at me again. "There's others," he said. "In other buildings. You should check your storage areas. Your laundry rooms." Then he walked to the stairs and climbed up. I listened to his footsteps cross the hallway above, heard the building's front door open and close. I stood alone in the basement for a long moment, my heart still racing. Then I ran up the stairs, slammed the basement door behind me, and locked myself in my apartment. The power came back on at 11:15 p.m. All my lights blazed to life at once. I called my landlord immediately, told him everything. He came over the next morning with a locksmith, and we put a deadbolt on the basement door. But what the man said keeps replaying in my mind. There's others. I've started checking the basement every few days. So far, I haven't found anyone else. But sometimes, late at night, I hear sounds through the floor, creaking, footsteps that aren't quite right. And I wonder if he was telling the truth. I work night security at a medical research facility outside Portland. It's not glamorous. I mostly sit in a small office, watch camera feeds, and do rounds every 2 hours. The building is 4 stories, mostly laboratories and storage, with about 30 people on the day shift and exactly 3 of us at night. Me, the other security guard Marcus, and usually 1 or 2 researchers working late. The facility has backup generators. If the main power fails, they kick in automatically within 10 seconds. We test them monthly. They've never failed. Until last Thursday, I was at my desk reviewing footage from the previous shift when the lights flickered. Not unusual. The building's electrical system is old, and sometimes when the HVAC cycles on, we get a brief flicker. But then everything went dark. Complete, total darkness. My monitors died. The hum of electronics that you don't even notice until it's gone just vanished. I waited for the generators. 10 seconds passed. 15. 20. Nothing. I grabbed my flashlight from the desk drawer and called Marcus on my radio. "Marcus, you copy?" Static. "Marcus, do you copy?" More static, and then his voice came through, broken and distorted. "Copy. Generators. Didn't." "Yeah, I noticed. I'm going to check the generator room. You stay at your post." "Not alone. Don't." The signal dissolved into static again. Our radios had never had this problem before. Whatever was affecting the power was affecting everything. The generator room is in the basement, past the storage areas and the freezer units. I'd been down there dozens of times. I knew the route even in the dark. I left my office and headed for the stairs. The emergency exit signs should have been glowing. They're battery powered, independent of the main system. But they were dark too. Everything was dark. My flashlight being cut through the blackness, bouncing off walls and doors. The building felt different without power. Sounds echoed strangely. My footsteps seemed too loud. I reached the stairwell and started down. 1 flight to the basement level. The door at the bottom was marked authorized personnel only. I swiped my key card, but the reader was dead. I used my physical key instead. The basement corridor stretched out in front of me, lined with doors on both sides. Storage, archives, equipment rooms, and at the far end, the generator room. I was halfway down the corridor when I heard something that made me stop. Music. Faint, distant music. Like someone was playing a radio, the volume turned low. I stood perfectly still, listening. It was coming from somewhere ahead of me, deeper in the basement. Not from the generator room, from one of the other rooms. I keyed my radio. "Marcus, are you hearing music?" Nothing. Not even static this time. I continued forward, moving slower now. The music got slightly louder. I recognized the song. Something from the 1960s. The Righteous Brothers, maybe. Unchained melody. The sound was coming from a door on my left. Room B7. According to the directory in my office, B7 was listed as cold storage. I tried the handle. Locked. But through the door, I could definitely hear the music. And something else. A rhythmic sound. Beep, beep, beep. Like a heart monitor. This was wrong. Storage rooms don't have radios or medical equipment. And if they did, they wouldn't be running without power. I unlocked the door with my master key and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Antiseptic. Sharp and chemical. The room was larger than I expected, and my flashlight revealed equipment I didn't recognize. Not storage. This was a laboratory. Workbenches lined with instruments. Computers. And against the far wall, something large covered with a tarp. The music was coming from a small radio on one of the workbenches. Old-fashioned, battery-powered. The display screen glowed green in the darkness. The beeping was coming from behind the tarp. Every rational part of my brain told me to leave. Call this in. Get Marcus. Get someone from day shift. But I was already walking toward the tarp. I grabbed the edge and pulled it back. Underneath was a hospital bed. And in the bed, connected to monitors and in forward drip, was a person. A woman. Young, maybe late 20s. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. The monitor showed her heart rate, her blood oxygen levels, all running on battery power. She wasn't supposed to be here. There were no patient rooms in this facility. We did research, not treatment. No one had ever mentioned anyone being housed in the building. I reached for my radio again. Marcus, I need you in the basement. Now. Room B7. Static. I moved closer to the woman. There was a clipboard hanging on the bed frame. I picked it up and read the top sheet. Subject 19. Day 47 of induced coma. Vitals stable. Next consciousness trial scheduled for. The date listed was tomorrow. I heard footsteps in the corridor. Finally. Marcus. In here. I called out. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. But no one came in. Marcus. I walked to the doorway and shined my light into the corridor. Empty. Then I heard more footsteps. Multiple people. Coming from both directions. Footsteps in the corridor to my left. Footsteps to my right. But I couldn't see anyone. I backed into the room, my light sweeping back and forth. The footsteps got closer, echoing off the concrete walls. Deliberate. Unhurried. They stopped just outside the door. I could hear breathing. Multiple people breathing. But my flashlight showed an empty corridor. Then, a voice. Female. Clinical. Emotionless. Observation protocol initiated. Subject awareness detected. Recording. I spun around. The voice had come from inside the room. But there was no one there except me and the woman in the bed. The monitors next to the bed started beeping faster. The woman's heart rate was increasing. Her eyelids began to flutter. Abort observation, the voice said. Security breach. Initiating containment. The door slammed shut behind me. I ran to it, grabbed the handle. Locked. I pulled out my keys, tried to unlock it. Nothing happened. The mechanism wouldn't turn. The lights in the room suddenly blazed to life. Fluorescent overheads, bright and harsh. I blinked against the sudden glare. The woman in the bed opened her eyes. She looked directly at me. Her mouth opened, and she screamed. Not a normal scream. A sound that shouldn't come from a human throat. High-pitched, warbling, wrong. I covered my ears, but the sound cut through everything. The monitors went crazy, alarms blaring, lights flashing. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The lights went out. The monitors went silent. The woman's eyes closed. I stood in the darkness, my flashlight shaking in my hand, my ears ringing. The door unlocked with a click. I didn't wait. I ran. Out of the room, down the corridor, up the stairs. I didn't stop until I reached the main entrance. Marcus was there, standing by the front desk, looking confused. "Where were you?" he asked. "I've been trying to reach you on the radio. Didn't you hear me?" I was breathing hard, my heart pounding. "I called you. Multiple times. I've been here the whole time. Radio's been dead since the power went out." "How long has it been out?" Marcus checked his watch. "Maybe 5 minutes." The generators just kicked in. Look, the lights were on. Everything was running normally, like nothing had happened. 5 minutes. I'd been in the basement for at least 20. Yeah, why? I didn't answer. I went back to my office and pulled up the building directory on my computer. Room B7. According to the official records, it was listed as storage janitorial supplies. I checked the camera feeds. The basement cameras showed empty corridors. Room B7's camera feed was offline, noted as under maintenance. I pulled up the access logs. According to the system, no one had accessed B7 in over 3 months, but I had been there. I'd seen the woman, the equipment, the monitors. I worked the rest of my shift, but I didn't do any more rounds. At 6 a.m., when the day shift arrived, I turned in my resignation. Marcus thought I was crazy. The facility manager accepted my 2 weeks' notice without question. I worked those 2 weeks from the front desk only. I never went back to the basement. On my last day, I looked up the building's history. 20 years ago, before it was a research facility, the building had been a private psychiatric hospital. It closed down after allegations of unethical experiments. Room B7 had been a patient room. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if the woman was real or if something about the power outage let me see something that's always been there. All I know is that some buildings hold on to their history. Some rooms never really stop being what they were. And sometimes, when the lights go out, the boundaries between past and present get thin. I work at a bank now. Nice, normal, boring, fully lit. And I've made a rule for myself. If the power ever goes out, I'm leaving. No questions asked. No investigating. Some mysteries aren't worth solving.